Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a very good evening to today's session. After a brief interval, we started again with our webinars that we regularly offer on Saturdays from 9 to 10 p.m. And guess what? We have an amazing presenter today. What I like about him is his amazing and cool way of presenting, and obviously his vocal. He has a very strong voice, which actually suits the requirement of the presentation. So let me welcome Victor Momoh to our Bangladesh Excel Meetup platform today. Hi, Victor.
Hey, hi, thanks for the invite. Sometimes I'm like, do I call you Rupom? Do I call you Mohammed? But I think maybe Rupom may be fine.
Yeah, Rupom is quite fine. I'm prominent in this name in Bangladesh, so you can call me Rupom. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Nice meeting
Hi,
you
Victor.
too.
Hey, hi, that's Rashid. Is that how it's
Yeah.
pronounced? Or is it pronounced Rashid?
You were the first who spelled me right. Most people used to spell like Oz did, Rashid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's one
You
E, so
spelled
I was
rightly.
like, yes, like, okay.
Yeah. He's one of our resources in the group.
I can tell. I watched a few of your webinars and I kept seeing his face, so I figured that. Yes.
Great, Rashid, you are very
Thank you.
popular then.
Not like you, but I'm trying to be not popular. I'm trying to be an impactful resources in Excel community.
That's the spirit.
Great. You're creating an impact, Rashid. Alhamdulillah.
Thank
Yes.
you so much.
So, sorry, guys, we have a, sorry, it's me who is having a technical difficulty with my laptop. So I logged in through my mobile. The session is recording. So those who have joined the session, you can obviously follow along, and the resources file will be shared through the shared drive. Since we cannot share the QR code now, I will be sharing the link to download the files and other resources through your registered email addresses, so that you can download and practice. And we'll be uploading today's webinar session in our YouTube channel, so that you can follow when you need it, right? So without any further delay, I would request Victor to start today's amazing session. So it's over to you, Victor.
All right, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. It's supposed to be the easiest thing, but sometimes it just doesn't work. So, okay, so can you see my screen? Okay,
Yep.
great. All right. Okay, so I'll just go ahead then. So thanks again, Rupam, and to the other great guys in Bangladesh. Most people will hear me say this every time. I don't take it for granted when I get invited, because I'm like, there are so many experts around the world. So if you invite me, I'm not like, oh, okay, yes, because I'm the only guy, so you have to invite me. So I always consider it a privilege. So yeah, because there's so many people you can invite. I mean, like I can help you get a lot of people too. So so when it's me, I'm like, okay, yeah. So it's a privilege. So thank you for that. So what we want to talk about today basically is dynamic arrays. Don't mind my funny caption on the screen. You see that I put dynamic array tricks with a question mark, because I'm like, are they really tricks? But the idea is just to get you a little more familiar with dynamic arrays. We've had them for a while now. I mean, if you go on YouTube and you type dynamic arrays in Excel, you probably see videos as old as 6 years ago, maybe 2019ish. So they've been here for a long time, but a lot of people aren't using them for different reasons. When it comes to licensing, Microsoft 365, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, beyond just saying I want to use some of these these tools or these features. So that's one. because some people don't have access to them. Then some other people have access to them, but they don't even know what they can do, right? So that's the second category, and that's a challenge in itself. So I want to just give you some ideas, simple things where the functions kind of help you, to make life easier. Then as with most of my sessions, it kind of gets complicated as we go ahead. So, but not too complicated for you not to be able to follow. But it's kind of like standard, you always want to start like, okay, baby steps, and then it gets to a point people are like, hey, what's going on here? So, but I mean, feel free to, ask a question. Maybe someone could help me monitor the chat or something. I could put it up as well. So if you have a question, just feel free to ask. I mean, I'm happy to re-explain everything. Most times my objective is not to finish all the spreadsheets you see, all the sheets on the screen. If I only touch on 2 of them, I want you to understand what we are doing. So that's kind of how it would go. So let me just go ahead and start and see how much I can cover within the time. So the first thing is to say, okay, well, what are dynamic arrays? Like a lot of times it's more difficult to define things than to actually, demonstrate them. When you show people what it is, they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. But, when you define, most times it's like, okay, it just sounds like a lot of words, and like, what exactly are you saying? So for those of us who've used Excel quite a bit, one thing you will remember, those of us that started at least maybe, let me say Excel 2003 or 2007, 10, 13, 16, you remember that whenever you say equals to and you pull up a formula to do something, most times it only gives you one value, right? Like you hardly would have a situation where you say equals to, even if you say equals to 10 things, most times what you get back is just one result. That's the way Excel used to be pre-dynamic arrays. So it means that even if you do a calculation that is supposed to give you supposedly, maybe 10 results, most times what you do is that you get just one. Okay, if you are sitting in one cell. If you select like 10 cells, then you could use, back in the day, we'll press a combination of Control Shift and Enter, and when you press that, then the formula is populated across those 10 cells. But it means you must know the size of what you are expecting beforehand. So if I know that I'm going to have 5 cells, then I come in here and I select the 5 cells, I write a formula, and then it will populate in those 5 cells. But there are situations where I don't know how many cells, this result is going to go into. So what am I going to do in such a case? Because it's possible that I have a list of maybe staff in my company and maybe the countries they are from. Maybe before we used to have only from 5 countries. So I set it up with 5 like this. And then a new person joins from a different country. It means I need to now set it up as 6. But wouldn't it be better if you had a formula that could make those calculations and then expand or contract as the case is? That's kind of the idea of dynamic arrays, to say that even if I don't know the size of the array beforehand, even if I don't know what I'm expecting, the formula already can figure that out. And if it is 4, it shrinks from 5 to 4. If it is 6, it expands from 5 to 6. So it's kind of dynamic responding to the data. So the data drives, how many cells it probably selects and the calculation that it does. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. If you look at my my Excel here and you do equals to and you select this, back in the day, if you did this and you press enter, you won't get everything I'm showing you here. Now you can see that by pressing 1 equal sign with a cell that has 11 cells, it gives you everything at once. Back in the day, what used to happen would look something like this. Right, I just put this to prevent the behavior that Excel would naturally do. This is what we used to see before, although we didn't used to put the at, right? But whenever you even point to 11 cells and you say equals to, instead of Excel giving you 11 results, Excel will give you just one result, the intersection between your formula and the range you've selected. If I write this formula on this cell, it's going to give me this result. Okay, so but this was pre-dynamic arrays. But in dynamic arrays now, you can reference multiple cells and get multiple results at once. That's me trying to explain in a long-winded way, what it is we want to talk about. But just by that simple change of being able to reference multiple cells at once, it opens up a new world, for us in terms of the kind of things we can do when it comes to dynamic things. When we say things are dynamic, it means that we are not going there to change everything to make things work. Like things are, able to contract and expand on their own accord as the data changes. That's basically what it means. So think of dynamic versus static, right? It's fixed. This one responds and moves. Okay, so I stole this definition from ChatGPT. I just said, ChatGPT, tell me what's the dynamic array, and this is the definition it gave me. And I said, okay, I think it's fine. It says it's a formula that returns a list table of results, automatically resizing and updating as the underlying data changes. So if you didn't like my long explanation, ChatGPT has done a better job than I would ever be able to do. So that's what it is, so it's able to resize and update. Okay, so let's leave the definitions. I'm sure people are not here for an English class. You want to just see see demonstrations. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So, but just to say that when dynamic arrays were introduced, like dynamic arrays are not functions. It's a concept, right? That's really what it is. It's not like say,
True.
dynamic. Yeah, people think dynamic arrays are unique, sort by filter. No, as in what happened was that the entire calculation engine of Excel was changed in the way Excel is now able to calculate things. So even the functions that now existed even before that are just able to take advantage of that new behavior, right? So when people say, oh, dynamic array functions, it may not be technically correct, right? Because now almost every function is a dynamic array function because it's taking advantage of dynamic arrays. Right? So just to put that out there, but you hear those terminologies, but yeah, but let's not get into that. So, but when dynamic arrays were introduced, these were the first set of functions that were introduced. Okay, unique, sort by, filter, sequence, and round array. Those were like the first 6 that came when that whole dynamic array concept was introduced. Then later they added a few more, which I kind of have captured here, and I probably cannot keep track, so I added a few more here that I know were added recently, maybe more recently, right? Image, trim range, group by, pivot by, percent off, and recently, for those of us that like programming kind of things, we have regex, which allows you to extract information based on patterns, but I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, so let me just show you an example as we kind of get started. Yeah, I always press the wrong thing there. I wanted to press this zoom, but it's fine. Okay, so look at this list. This is just a list of, like individuals, right? And I'm just trying to show you the advantage we have with some of these functions and the new functionality. So back in the day, you can see that if you look at this list, you will see that some names are repeated, correct? You can see that Leila Gerani appears, twice. Maybe I could make another Tia. Most of you may know Tia from like London Excel meetup. So her name appears twice. Back in the day, most times we want to get a unique list. And these are the kind of formulas we used to write. Just look at this. I'm not explaining the formulas, I'm only showing you. So you kind of see how complicated they used to be to create a list that, automatically can strip out the duplicates from here and give you a unique list. Now, the bad thing about it was that when you write the formula sits in one cell and you now have to drag it down, right? And when you drag it down, you have to drag it to the point where you feel, okay, it covers for future data that would come in. And most times you really don't know, most times you really don't know how much more data will be added, so it doesn't seem like an efficient way to work. Right? I think we need to mute a few people. Okay.
No, it was
okay,
an accident, I guess. Yeah.
No, it's all right. If that doesn't happen, you're not in Teams, so that always happens, so it's fine. Okay, so yeah, so what we used to do then was complicated formulas like this, and then we drag it down, to make room for more data that would come, and the formulas used to be as complicated as this. But right now, with dynamic arrays, you can write a formula as simple as the third option, which I have here, which is unique. And what unique just does is that it takes out the duplicates and says, even though a name appears 3 times, 4 times, it is one name, right? So, and it then lists a unique list for you. So look at this pre-dynamic array. Look at this. This is what we have right now. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're not taking advantage of some of these functions, you're solving problems in a more difficult way. You know what I mean? Like you don't get any marks for writing a formula as complicated as this. The point is that we want to solve a problem. The faster you can solve the problem, the better for everybody. The only challenge I think we have is that in some organizations, some people are still using the old Excel, let's call it that. And, when you write a formula with unique and you give it to somebody who is using Excel 2010, then, he can't use it.
Yes.
But if you're in an organization where everybody's on the same version, like maybe Excel 365, then it's perfect, just move and, use this kind of functions to make your life easy. Okay, so that was just an example to make the point, for what we want to do, to say this is why whatever I'm saying makes sense, because life is easier. Why do you want to have a difficult life when you can have it easy? Okay, so let me show you quickly a few of them, and then after that, it starts to get a little interesting. So the first one is having a list that looks like this. Let me see if I can. I'm using a very big screen, so it may look small. Okay, so here, so now we have this list, and we want to get a unique list of individuals. Basically, use the unique function. So just pull up the unique. Okay, and this is a table, so I can just look for this downward pointing arrow. Once I click this, it selects. This just means the table name and then the name of the column. Okay, and close the bracket. Now you see automatically it gives me a unique list. Now the beautiful thing here is that if I add another name here, that name gets added if it's not a name that exists already. Okay, so you see my name gets added. But if I change maybe one of the Leila Geranis, for example, to my name, nothing really happens maybe in terms of, in terms of the length. It's just, like a reordering, so to say. So even though Victor Momoh appears twice here, once and twice, in the unique list, I only appear once, right? That's what the unique does. Okay, so that's that. Now there's the sequence function. The sequence function is basically what it is, sequence. So maybe those of us that did, mathematics in like what we will call O levels, you would always talk of a sequence, which is kind of numbers following a certain pattern, right? And it could also be characters following a certain pattern, right? So if you want to create, back in the day, we used to have some complicated ways of doing it, but now you can write something that looks like this. If you want to create a sequence of maybe say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't need to write that. You just say sequence of 5. Basically, it creates for you 5 rows starting from 1. Okay, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the beautiful thing about sequence is that you could also create, multi-column, multi-row, right? So you could do something like sequence, and you could say rows 5 and column 6. Automatically, it creates for you 1 to 30. And we'll use something like this when you're trying to do a dynamic, calendar, for example. Okay, and then somebody says, oh, Victor, it always starts from 1. Does it have to start from 1? I'm like, no, it doesn't have to start from 1. That's why you have this argument called the start. So I can say I want to start from 100, and then it starts from 100 and it goes that way. Of course, this is just because the column width isn't wide enough to see it. So now, this opens up a whole new world for you, right? And when you look at these dynamic arrays, what you see is that the formula is sitting in one cell. The formula is not sitting in all these cells. So let's see that. When you click this top left cell, you can see the formula showing you it's bold. You can see it clearly. When you click in this cell, you'll notice that it's grayed out, right? Because the formula is actually just sitting in one cell and it spills. That's the word that we use. So it spills into the other cells. Okay, so if you want to delete this whole thing that I have on the grid, instead of selecting like this and doing delete, which is what most people would do, you don't need to do that. Just select the first cell and you press delete, it goes, because technically that formula only sits in one cell and it then spills, into the other cells. Okay, so that's the sequence function. Rand array is an improvement on the rand function. The rand function used to
Can
allow
I
you to
ask you something?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sure, why not?
Yeah, on behalf of the participants,
Okay.
what we regularly face from while conducting a session and showing the unique function to people. So while creating dashboard, or if we want to set a restriction in the data entry, we use data validation, right?
Correct.
And we prepare a drop-down list with this.
Yes.
So if we use the source of drop-down list with unique function, will it work?
So I have a tab here which is called data validation, where I would show that. But to answer the question, the answer is no. Like if you are using, so your question here is data validation, and using in here, typing in the unique
Yes.
function, right? If that's your question, the answer is no, it wouldn't work. So a couple of functions work in here. The functions that work in here are functions that give you like ranges, so to say. So you have offset will work in here, index will work in here, XLOOKUP will work in here, indirect would work in here. The if function too would work in here. But when you are using things like unique, what you have to do is that you have to spill it to the grid like I have here, and then you point to, what you have on. It's for me, I'm answering your question, which is that no, it doesn't work. But if you ask me, I would have said I would love it to work. You know what I mean? Like, why do I need to put it on the grid and then, go to data validation and point to it? It would be easier if I could write this same expression, right, inside of data validation. But unfortunately, there are just a couple of functions that work in there. So, the workaround is the workaround. You either create a named range and then you point to the named range inside of the data validation, or, if it's just a regular formula on the grid, you can point to equals to this hash, and I will show that, somewhere later on. Hopefully I get there.
Perfect.
But thank you for asking. Okay, so then RANDARRAY is just like I was saying, creating random numbers between 0 and 1. That's what RAND used to do. So, we had the RAND function. So RAND just basically creates a number between 0 and 1. And every time you press F9 on Excel, which is recalculate, it basically just gives you a different number, right? Okay, so RANDARRAY is just an expansion of that instead of sitting in one cell, you can create an array of random numbers. So, for example, RANDARRAY, sorry, when I type too fast, that happens. It says, how many rows do you want? Let's say I want 5 rows. How many columns do you want? I want 5 columns. Okay. Now, minimum, maybe the lowest number in the range, 10. Let's say maximum number 20. So the last argument just says, okay, are you going to give me integers, which is whole numbers, or are you going to give me decimals? Okay, something like that. So if you do this, okay, so you see you have random numbers with just one. The formula is sitting in one cell and it creates this for you. So it's the fact that you can type a formula in one cell and it can create multiple things tied to that. That's the advantage of dynamic arrays. And if you press F9 here, right, it keeps randomizing. If I change this from 0 to 1, then basically I'm going to have integers. Okay, so that's just the idea of that. Okay, so that's the first 3 of the 6 that were first introduced. Let's do the next one, which is one thing that used to be very hard in Excel: sorting within a formula. If you are sorting just regular sort, that's easy, right? If you select this, you can go to home, and then everybody can come here and, you can do your sort. Some people do it from data, and then they can do sort. Some people can right click, and then they can do sort. You can do sort from many places, but that's when you are sorting, like the static data, right? But when you are in a formula context and saying, if this is my data, I want to have a sorted version of it, right? That used to be difficult in Excel. I know how I used to do it, but now you have a simple function that does it, which basically is just what? Sort. Okay, so, and then you give it, the input. Right, and you can see that this is the sorted version of what we have, here. And if for any reason I introduce a name that is first alphabetically, automatically it comes to the top. So let me create a name like this. If there's a question, please go ahead. Okay, all right. I don't know if that's Shiraj. Do you want to ask a question? Okay, so the good thing here is that, this automatically makes things, they are tied together. So if you change the input, this changes.
প্লিজ কেউ আনমিউট করে থাকলে একটু মিউট করে দিবেন। Sorry, I use my local language.
No, that's okay. We all have ours. It's fine. Okay, so that's one. Then the next version is kind of, sort by. Most of us may have experienced this before, but I'm doing a simple example here. There are sometimes you just sort by one column, but there are times where you have a larger, array and you want to sort by maybe one column within that, or say, okay, sort this entire thing, but use this column to sort it. So that's kind of the example, but let's not get it too complicated. The idea here is this: I have these names and I have these scores, okay? And let's say I want to then sort these names based on the order of the scores, okay? So it's like saying you have maybe people writing an exam, or maybe people's salary, or you conduct a test at work, and you want the names to be sorted in order of, the scores, for example. You can just use sort by for that, which is saying, I want to sort what? The names based on what? Based on their scores, okay? So that's what I'm saying. I want to sort these names based on their scores. The question is, how do you want to sort it? Do you want to sort it in ascending or descending order? Do you want the person with the highest score to come first, or do you want him to come last? Okay, so that's what this means, ascending or descending. If you say descending, it means that the person with the highest score will come first. So let's do descending and see if that makes sense. Okay, all right. So now you see that Bob Omlas is the first person, and that's because his score of 7 is the highest in here. If I change Tia to have a number of 11, what does that mean? It means that Tia will automatically come to the top here. Let's see if that happens. Okay, so do 11, and you see that she comes up here. So everything is dynamic in the sense that I'm not touching anything here. This is what it is, right? I only play with the input, the output responds to me, right? And the good thing too when you're using an Excel table is that an Excel table expands. So if I add my name in here and say Victor Momoh, for example, unless that's because of whatever that is. This is the only problem sometimes, but I mean I can fix that. I just change this to 29, which is why, of course, because I put that data outside of the table, that's why I had that. Okay, so the good thing is that it would respond, accordingly. This is just like, okay, I didn't intend to do what I just did, but I said, okay, let me just show you that. So, but the idea here is you are sorting a particular range based on another range. Okay, so then the last one, before I then go into more examples, is using the filter function. This is one we do a lot, and HR people get to do this a lot. HR can look at this data and they say, I want to see only people that are in finance department, for example, right? Because you have a list of all the staff in the company, it's a lot. But the manager comes to you and says, I just want to see for finance, some people call it finance. Okay, whichever one. So you can use the filter function, which is what you would normally do. You will filter the data to show you just, finance. You do that normally with this regular filter, right? This is what most of us do. We go to sort and filter and we do filter. And then you put these arrows and then you say, okay, department, I want to see only this. Okay, but you can do that in a formula now, right? So I can write a formula that looks like this and say filter. I give it the entire thing. Okay, and then there's an include criteria. Include criteria is just something that needs to give me either a true or a false. So what's my criteria here? I want to see only people whose departments are finance. So what I do is I select all of their departments and I test, is it equals to, for example. What this means is you're testing each of them against the text finance. It's going to give you stuff like this. You see what this is? True, false, true, false, true, false. So anyone that is true will show up. Anyone that is false will not show up. So if you press, this here, and you see these are only the people in finance. Okay, so I will show you a neater way to do it, because you don't want to hard code this and write this in the formula. You want to have this maybe in a cell somewhere so that you can always change to different departments and it would respond to it. Okay, so now let's pick up the pace. On this one here, these are just some things you need to maybe be careful with. The first thing is that you can get a spill error sometimes when you use dynamic arrays. Why does that happen? Because sometimes there's data in its way. So think about this. Let me write here, let me put a value here, 10, okay? And I come here and I say equals to sequence of 5. What's this going to do? This is going to create for me 5 rows of data, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, correct? But now when you press enter, it shows you spill error. Why? Because there's a value here that is not allowing it to what? To spill. It wants to expand to 5 rows, but you've typed in something here. So if I get this out of the way for any reason, then this spills. This is just because of formatting, right? Basically. Okay. So that's something you need to be careful. So if you see spill error, it just means that most times there is data, obstructing it. If you don't know where the data is, that's easy too. You can just click, this warning triangle here, and it tells you select obstructing cells. Okay. And then that's the obstructing cell. It selected it, and you can press delete or you can do whatever. But the point is you can identify it, because the reason why it's obvious to everybody that there's something there is because I typed this. But I could have had a cell that has just space in it. Look at this. Right? You can't see anything. And you're like, oh, why is it not able to spill? There's a space in here and you can't see it. So then in that case, this becomes very useful by saying select obstructing cells. So even though you don't see anything in it, believe Excel that there's something in it. Okay. Yeah. And if I delete, then it kind of works. Okay. So that's something you just need to know if that happens.
This is quite a good example.
Oh yeah, it happens and people like, I'm not sure what's going on, so yeah, but if you can see it, go ahead and handle it. If you can't see it, ask Excel to find it for you. So
yeah, you cannot see even if having a spectacle in your eyes.
Exactly.
Also, yeah,
So just rely on Excel in that case. Okay,
yeah,
so then volatile functions can cause indeterminate speed ranges. This is just a law of language. Sometimes when we mean volatile functions, we mean functions that recalculate every time Excel calculates. The way Excel is supposed to work is that if I have these values here, maybe if I have something linked to this, the only time this value is supposed to change is when the input value changes. That's what should happen. But when you have volatile functions like things like now, whenever we want to get today's date, we write, today, or we write now, right? Every time, let me use a cell that doesn't have some kind of pre-formatting. Come down here, let's see. I put a lot of conditional formatting here, so that's why things are okay. So if you kind of see what's going on here, you see that, yeah, this formula is 1137. If I kind of add, let me just add something else to it. Let's add the seconds to it. Okay, just so that people can see. All right, so you see this is like the time now. Okay, but every time, Excel recalculates for any reason, that value changes, right? So now these are like volatile functions. Rand and rand array too can be volatile. So sometimes Excel is not able to figure out, oh, what output is this giving me? I can't give you an example for that, but that has happened to me a lot of times where I will see a spill error, and the spill error is not because there's a cell obstructing it. Excel cannot just figure out the size of the array because I'm using a random function in there, and rand can produce anything, and Excel doesn't know what it is producing at that point in time. That's just the meaning of this big language, but you don't need to bother about that. Then dynamic arrays inside of tables, that's another problem. If you type a formula like this that needs to spill 5 cells inside of a table, you get a spill error. So just know that there are ways around it, but let's leave that for now. Okay, so sometimes, yes, as in when you have so many of them linked together, you may have a situation where it may not update, as at when you expect. But these are bugs. These are not the way it's supposed to behave, right? But everything in life has, like sometimes where it misbehaves, and that's that. Okay, then this one I'm saying here is that some functions need to be coerced to spill. Let me explain what I mean here. This is just saying that there are some functions in Excel that should work normally, but sometimes they just don't work. Let me give you an example. Let's do, how many of us know this function, EO month? Every HR person should know this, the end of the month function. Okay, so if I give you a date, and I say, what is the last date of that month? That's the meaning of this. Okay, so it would always give me the last date of the month. Let's format it as this. Okay, if I change this from January to February, it gives me, you see, it can figure out that it's 28 days in February, 31 days in January, and so on. So now, let's do something. Let's create let's say like 10 dates. Just watch this. Don't bother with whatever I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is just for this one is just for to create something. I'm using a Mac, so I don't have a lot of the shortcuts you need. Okay, so now these are a lot of dates, and I want to find the end of the month for all of them. Based on everything I've been teaching you, you can do this and do this. Normally, this should work, right? It should ideally give you the end of the month for all of them, but you get a value error. And that's just because there are some functions, a lot of them, Mr. Excel documented a lot of them, that just refuse to work naturally with dynamic arrays. And when you have this situation, you have to force them to work by doing a mathematical calculation in here. So if I want to fix this, I can do something like this, 0 plus this. Anything added to 0, is the same. Right? If I add 0 to 2, 0 to 3 is the same. So basically, I'm not changing the value. I'm just forcing it, to respond to dynamic arrays. And if I do this, now it works. Okay? So there's just some functions like this that do not respond. E-dates, also that also happens to it. So many people do it in different ways. Some people can do 0 plus, some people can do minus minus. The same thing. Okay? So let's leave that. Okay, so let me show you guys now some cool things that you can do quickly as I move now. Right, so the first one is this. You have this data, groups of people grouped into 1 to 6, and your manager says, I want you to give me a comprehensive list of all of them, 1 column of data, right? Now, what most people would do is they start copying them one after the other. This person will copy, paste it here, copy the next one. If you are that kind of person, you need to stop doing that. You know, so there are many ways you can do this. So there's a function that allows you to do that. Let me show you that. So you can use to call. What to call means is that take this whole thing and bring it into one column to call. Okay, and there's to row. To row would mean bring it into one row, but in this case I want to bring it all into one column. So what I will do is I will select the entire thing, right, all at once. That's the beautiful thing. Okay, and do enter, and you see that automatically it takes everything and it gives you one column. There are just a few things, right, which I want you to note. Now, if you go to the bottom, you will see here that, right, it's showing you some zeros. Those zeros represent the blank cells that are here. You know, these guys here are what are showing as zeros there. Okay, so, but to call also like, okay, yeah, I won't leave you. I can fix that. So let's press a comma. Look at the next set of arguments. What does it say? It says ignore blanks, ignore errors, ignore blanks and errors. So for this one, I can use ignore blanks. Okay, and when I do ignore blanks and then enter, let's go down again and see. Now you see that we don't have the zeros are gone. So even though they were not all of the same size, I could use a simple formula, you know, a function to get it into one column, and it's dynamic. The beautiful thing about it being dynamic is that if I add a name in here now, you know, it's going to come up there. So let's do MD Rupom. Let's add you in there somewhere. Okay, so you should show up somewhere. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's you, right? So you see yourself down here. So automatically by just, let me see, this may not be big enough. Okay, so by just adding, you know, a single name into it, it responds accordingly. So to call is a function that you need to know that you could use for this kind of scenario if you ever face it. All right, let me do this one. I kind of jumped here. Now this one is an interesting one, which is the reverse of what we just did. How many of us have been in Teams meeting or Zoom meetings where we want to do breakout rooms? Some of us know what that means, right? Breakout rooms is like if we want to split us here now into a few rooms and say maybe all the people from Bangladesh, one room, all those of us from Nigeria, one room and stuff, you know, they could break it out that way. Then sometimes you also have a list of people that you want to divide into groups and you want to divide them randomly, right? So how do you do that? You can do that with, you know, function in Excel. Here, let me see, what's that going to do here? I want to turn this off. Give me a second. I don't want to delete it. So let me, yeah. Okay, so now let's come here. So what I want to do is this. I'm going to use a few things here. I want to make it random so that it's not like, oh, the first set of people go to this room. I just want to randomize it. So somebody doesn't come and say, oh, Victor, you were partial. You put me in the same room with Rupom. I don't want to be in the same room with Rupom. I'm like, hey, I didn't do it. It's Excel. Okay, so the first thing we will do is this. We create random numbers. Random numbers help you when you want to randomize things. Okay, so I can create rand array, you know, and it says how many rows do I want? Okay, I will want it to be the number of rows I have in my data. So I can use a function like count A. Count can help me count how many, you know, rows I have in here. Why I'm using count A is that in case it changes tomorrow and they add more people to the list, count A would expand. If you write something like this and say rand A because you know there are 50 people, if you then add 10 more people to the list, you know, it doesn't work, right? So it's better you allow Excel figure out the count by itself. Okay, that's the whole idea here. Okay, so I'm going to do count A of, you know, this. Okay, so now you can see that I have random numbers, right? So let me show you. If you do this, if you just keep pressing F9, it's changing. Okay, so what I will now do is I will now sort all these names based on these random numbers, meaning that the names would then be in any order, right? So I would come outside of it and I will use a function I already showed you, which is what? Sort by. Okay, so I'm going to say I want to sort these names based on that order. So now see what happens. I have the names. You see Theodore Simon here. You're like, oh, that's the first guy, but it will change immediately once I do this. Okay, so now I now have all the names randomized. So that's the thing. Now that I have it randomized, I now want to break it out into rooms. This is where I use another function. The function I used before was to take things from multiple columns into one column. Now I'm doing the reverse, which is taking from one column into multiple columns. So I will use a function called wrap, you know, wrap rows. Sometimes these functions get your head messed up because you're like, should it be wrap rows or wrap columns? But what I know is this: if I know how many columns I have or I want, I use wrap rows. That's the way I think about it. So think about it, it's in the reverse. If I know how many columns should be on a row, then I use wrap rows. If I know how many rows should be in a column, then I use wrap calls. Okay, so what this is saying here is, you know, wrap rows, then it's now asking you, how many do you want to break it into? I've put a cell here. I want to break it into 3. That's my idea. Okay. So, and then I close the bracket. So see what it does. Automatically, it has broken that into 3. If I change this now, you see 4, 5. So automatically I can create groups, and it is dynamic. It keeps changing. Don't worry, I will fix the hash NA before you ask me. So now the next thing is, yeah, because what happens is that if the number is not divisible, like there are 50 people, is not divisible by 7, you will have hash NAs. So what do you do in such a case? Wrap rows also has a last argument, which it says pad width. What it means is that when I'm not able to perfectly divide, what should I put in there? Then I just put, you know, our normal empty string to say, if you cannot divide perfectly, do this. Okay. And then, now it's neater, right? So we have it. So we can break into this and we can just send this list and say, yeah, these are the groups. And every time you press F9, the group changes. Okay. So, right. But so those two functions are kind of doing word and opposite. Don't forget, the first one was I had this, and I wanted to bring it into one column. In this case, what I've done is to take one column and break it into, you know, this number. Okay, so that's one. I'm always thinking how to go. Let me jump. I will come back. So let me show you guys something that is really, you know, cool, which is using the filter function. I know because I've spoken to Rupom that somebody is coming to talk on the filter function, and you know he will do a better job than I would do. So, but I will show you, you know, just something so that maybe by the time you show it to that, go into that session, you have an idea. All right, so let's do a simple one and just show you some things you can add in there to make things work. Some of these things will be useful for you when you start to create like dashboards and stuff like that. So let's do a simple filter function. You know what the filter function does? Filter is filter, meaning I don't want to see everything. I want to see only people that meet a certain criteria. So let me filter here. Okay. And let me do a criteria and say my criteria is where the gender is male. Let's do it this way. Okay. So what is just done is that it looked at that whole data and it's only brought up the people that are males. That's what it's done. I could have changed this, for example, to females, right? I miss an M. Okay, and that's that. Let me bring this down a little. Okay, good. All right. So now this is, you know, everything. Now the interesting thing which makes it dynamic is the fact that if anything changes in here, if for any reason this name, let's look for a female. Okay, this female, Leila Gerani. Let's just make Leila Gerani male for this example, only in this example. Okay, so if this happens, you know, she disappears from the list, right? Because she's no more a female. If she goes back to being a female, she comes back. Now, the interesting thing you can do is with Excel these days, you can have, you know, checkboxes, and checkboxes are really cool. Why? Because checkboxes are true or false. When you come in here and you click this cell, do you see what's here? It's false. The moment you check it, it becomes true. Okay, right? True or false. So you can use that in your filter. So if I want to, in this case, what I'm doing is I'm showing all the columns, as you can see. I'm showing all the columns. But it's possible that I don't need all the columns. I only want to show a few. And I want to use this to control the ones that I show. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another filter on top of this one. It's very simple. You'll be surprised, amazed how easy this is. I can do another filter. And I'm saying filter this result you are seeing, right? This result, everything you are seeing here, based on the value of this checkbox. What does this mean? It means that any checkbox that has a value of true would show up. Anyone that doesn't have a value of true would not show up, for example. So I do this, yes, it's going to give me a calc error because I don't have any of the checkboxes checked now. Now, if I check this, you can see the serial number is there. The first name is there. The higher date is there. You know, the department, the gender, and basically, you know, like I'm kind of working and everything is dynamic, right? You know, and I can do that. Of course, if you want to select all of them, you can just do spacebar. Spacebar will select everything for you, and that's that. Okay, so let me say that. Let me leave Chandu to do the rest. I just want to give you guys flavors. Like I'm just touching on different things and giving you ideas. He will come, and most times my webinars are focused on one concept, which is like maybe I take one function and do one function. But I decided today, like, okay, let me just touch on different things. Okay, so this is one question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Since you had shown 2 examples with the checkboxes, so people may ask that where do we get the checkbox?
Good question. Okay, so if I show you where and you don't have it there, then that's not my fault. That's your Excel's fault. Okay, so yeah, but good you mentioned that. So you go to insert and then you see checkbox. I'm using a Mac, right? So on the Windows it may be slightly offset, but this is where it is. Okay, so you can just select these cells and say checkbox, and it adds the checkboxes in there. Back in the day, we used to have to use, the developer tab, right? We used to use
Yeah,
this.
true.
Yeah, and then we have checkboxes, which then maybe may or may not, depending on whether you are using FormX or Form or ActiveX controls, it may introduce VBA or not. But right now, it's native, right? It's inside the cell,
Yeah.
and you can then
Inside the
check
cell.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
it's inside the cell, and you can do true or false. And you can use it in many ways. I used it here, I used it here, right? And what I
Yes.
did here was I used it with conditional formatting to say
Yeah.
that whenever it is checked, then this value should show. If it is not checked, then this value should be blank. So that's what I'm kind of doing here.
True.
So I'm not doing anything magical. I'm not that smart. I'm just playing tricks. Okay, so
Yes.
so that's where you get the
Great.
checkboxes since you asked.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the question. No, anytime. So let me show you this example. And this example, the idea here is just to say that, you can do what we are looking at really, if you think about it, is just doing multiple things with one formula. That's the idea. Like instead of writing a formula and dragging down, you write it once and it does everything for you. So let me give you this example. This is one thing I like a lot. I showed something different but similar in London Excel meetup, but I'll do it differently today, but basically the same idea. So now in this one, I like data types, right? When I say data types, this is what I mean. If you go to data, you will see these types here, right? So if you type a country, for example, like Nigeria, which is my country, so don't be angry, I use Nigeria as the example. Okay, and you change it to geography, what it does is that it then changes. Okay, that's fine. So I'm having a feeling now with this, maybe this example may not work. I hope, it would change it to a data type where you can then pull out information related to it, from the internet. Okay, so you can now see things like, the country's capital, the country's population, the country's GDP, the country's currency, and stuff like that. Let me see if this is going to work. Just a minute. Okay, so I think there's just something happening with this one here. So let me not bother with that. So when you use the Mac, sorry, I'm
Victor,
not.
I regularly work on it. I regularly want to work on it. I have so many analyses based on this.
Yes.
But we are facing so many problems because of our country and population is not stated as your structure. So here we are calling sub-district as Upozela in local language, where the local thana or police station is not stated. Sometimes we are having some malfunction regarding this. So, but this is very impactful. I used to work on it.
No, great. Yeah, I mean, so and thanks for adding that. I would say that what I'm showing more, it's the concept as opposed to the accuracy of the information. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
yeah, like
True.
it's
Yes,
more
yes,
the
yes.
yes. No, but no, I mean, I'm trying to support your point to say that you're right, that you could
Okay.
see some things here
Just to
that
give you
look.
the give you the information because you can have that to work for it because we are used to work on it because we need to work regularly on it. So that's the message to you. If you have the opportunity to Microsoft to fix it, you can.
Okay, we can talk about it after. I can send a message. No, that's fine. Yes. So so the idea here was to, like you could do Afghanistan and say dot population, right? This gives you the population of Afghanistan. That's that.
Yeah.
But
True.
like with everything I'm showing you here, I'm trying to say go away from one cell and dragging down. That's kind of my message. Don't do this. So I'm saying that you can actually select everything, like go all the way down and do a dot once and do population, and you get all the results at once. Okay, that's the idea of what I'm saying here. Like that's the idea of dynamic arrays. Instead of doing one cell and dragging down, you do everything, all at once. Okay, and you get that.
Yes.
Now, the next level to it is what somebody else will then do is he will come into area and he will do this. the whole thing again, Control Shift down, and then do dot area, and it's like, okay, it's now becoming a challenge, right? Because you now have to do this 5 times. So what I want to show you is that you can do it all at once because of dynamic arrays. There's a function in Excel which is called field value. Most times I show this, most people haven't seen it, but that's fine because we don't really use it. Field value allows you, to point to one thing, right? And then you can point to multiple fields at the same time. So this is what happens here. What this means is that it is going to do Afghanistan and give you population area at once. So let me do this first and see. Okay, so do you see that? So just with one, I'm pointing to Afghanistan and it's giving me these 5 parameters all at once. So what we just do in this case is we expand it. Rather than doing B3, we just expand it from B3 all the way down. Okay, and we do it. So we are doing it all at once, which is saying for all these countries, can you give me these 5 parameters all at once with one function? And then you do enter, and everything is there. Okay, so and that's the idea.
May I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, this population and area and the calling code is that pull up from the Wikipedia.
Yes, but these are text, right? I wrote them in here.
Okay, but the population, the total number of population from Afghanistan,
yes.
It's the current Wikipedia information, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So if that information is not updated, then you get, what will I say? Outdated results. So, like I said, just so that it's clear to everybody, I am not banking on the values I'm showing you. I'm only showing you the concept, right? Because sometimes you use it for stocks as well. You could use it for stock data to pull stock information from the net. But the point is the idea of, you can do multiple calculations with one, cell. That's the idea. So don't go and say, the population of Afghanistan is 38,041,754. Somebody was just born maybe 2 minutes ago, so it's probably 755 now. So, so you know what I mean. So it's more like, okay, the concept as opposed to, this is that. Okay, so yeah, so let's talk a little data validation, then I will show you something else. Okay, so Rupom asked this before, and the idea is, okay, data validation, right? Like if you want to create a drop down, but how do you do that using dynamic arrays? So like I said, let's assume we want to let me show you a few things that are cool here. Let's say we want to create a drop down of departments. If you look at this data, you can see that the departments are repeated. They are not, how many did I select there? There are about 18, but they are not 18 unique departments, right? They are just maybe about 5 or 6. Okay, so what you can do, this is what most people would do, is they will write like unique, right? Sorry, I have some defined names. And then they select this department. Okay, yeah. Okay, this is this, right? And then what we now do is that we go to data validation. So let's say I want to put it in here. So I go to data validation, which is on the data tab and data validation, right? I change this to lists, okay? And then in the source, I point to, now, this is what some people will do. If you do this, this is not good. Why? Because if anything changes in here, for any reason, and this expands or contracts, then you lose things out. So what you do is this. When you have a dynamic array, it responds to what they call the hash key, which is like the hash operator. If you do hash here, what this means is that starting from 04, which is this cell, give me everything that spills with it. Okay, so this way, you don't need to know whether it is 3 that spills, it is 4, it is 7. It is going to work this way. So you're just saying, point it to what? 04 hash. So with 04 hash, do okay. Now see what I mean. When you come here, you will see that, you have this list. If for any reason, there's a new department added, let's just create a new department and call that the Excel department. Now, if you come in here, you will see that Excel has been added. But if you had written your formula and said 04 to 011, this is what you would have gotten. You will stop at admin. It's not going to pick Excel, right? So that's the reason why you don't write it that way. So you write it, using the hash. The hash is saying that starting from here, give me everything that spills along with it. That's the idea. So if you want to point to this, look at this. If you do this and then go down, you see what Excel does. Excel gives you what? 04 hash. Somebody, okay, all right. I thought somebody raised his hand to ask a question. Now, let me show you something that is nice about data validation now in Excel. Data validation does not need you to do unique anymore if you are using the latest version of Excel. So what I mean is this, I could actually give it yes. So those of you who use the latest one would know that. I could give it this whole thing, and if I give it to data validation is still the same, it's still doing the same thing. It's going to strip out the duplicates, you know. And so let me convince everybody that I'm not just, you know, telling a lie. So I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to come in here, data validation. I'm going to come here and I'm going to do lists. And here, you know, I'm going to point to, let's say, this and do hash. Yeah. Okay. So normally what you expect is you're supposed to see like what? 18 values in here. But when you come in here, you see what Excel does. Excel handles like the blanks and handles the duplicates, and it takes them, you know, out. Okay, so that's that one. There's another example here, but I look at the time. I know we didn't start on the dot, so Rupom can tell me when he wants me to stop. I'm here. You just tell me because you guys are late and we have to respect people's times. So, but I'm always good to go, even if it's 3 hours. Let me show you guys something. This is dynamic charts, and dynamic charts are taking advantage of dynamic arrays. I'll show you 2 examples here. This one I think I really like to show. And I want to introduce a function which is called XLOOKUP. Now, most of you know VLOOKUP, and in fact, in most places, I don't know if it's the same in Bangladesh, Rupom, you can tell me. When somebody knows VLOOKUP, they consider themselves an expert. Is that the same in Bangladesh?
Yeah. Yes, same.
Okay, so it means that it's the same all around the world. Yeah, once you say, oh, how good are you with Excel? The person says I'm 8/10. And when you say, what can you do? VLOOKUP, you know. So once you can do VLOOKUP, you are 9/10, you know. That's the way. And sometimes even recruiters also fall for that because maybe the recruiters are not also very good at Excel. Yes. So once they see somebody, the only question they ask you is, you know, do you know VLOOKUP? Once you say yes, they say, oh, resume tomorrow. You know, you have the job. You know? So,
one thing I must mention that if you have any recruiter like Rupam Bhai, then he must be facing some challenges to conquer the recruitment session.
I wouldn't want to face you or Rupam, you know. I want to face somebody else.
I don't know. You know? I don't want to face Rupam Bhai anymore because I don't want to face it.
So I mean, I say that to introduce something that is better than VLOOKUP. And when I say better, I always say that I don't like getting into this is better than this, but I would say that XLOOKUP is more robust than VLOOKUP. You know, True. It can do more things. That's a fact. So that's not, you know, trying to bash VLOOKUP or anything. It's just a fact. Okay. So, but let me show you like the idea of using XLOOKUP, for example, before I do this example, just so that people have an idea. So let's say I have a name here, you know, like, sorry. I'm not sure what's going on. My keys are frozen. Oops. Okay. Sorry, give me a second here. Let's see. Yeah, it's for some reason this sheet is not responding to my arrows. Okay, let me try and work without it. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, there's something wrong. Give me a second. Let me close this and reopen it.
Not an issue. We can consider this as the last for today.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, this will be the last thing I'll do. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I really want to show this. Okay, so Thank you. Good. No problem. So here, so if I want to find, let's say for Jane, for example, I want to find, you know, you can see this list and I want to return maybe whatever she sold in maybe June, for example. I can use an XLOOKUP, which is kind of saying, there's this name Jane. I want to look for it here, right? I don't know where it is. I know it's somewhere there, and I want to return this. This is basically saying, look for Jane, go here, keep going from row to row. You know, when you find Jane, then return whatever she has in this June column. Okay, so let's not use Jane because Jane is the first one. Let's use somebody else. Let's use Jackie. Okay, so you see that it comes to Jackie, which is here, and it figures out that you have what? 246 in there. That's how XLOOKUP basically works. Look for this value and return something. That's the idea. Okay, so now let me do something which is dynamic here. What I want to be able to do is I want to do like what you may call a year-to-date chart, right? Which is that if I select a month here, I want only from January to that month to be plotted, right? Meaning that I don't want to see June to December. Whoops, sorry. I just threw away something, but it's fine. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of like a year-to-date. So meaning that if I say May here, I want what it returns for me to be only data up to what? May. If I select, December all the way to December. So how do I do this? Something interesting, you see what I will do here. I'll do an XLOOKUP, and then I look for this month, May. I look for it somewhere here. Okay, which means that it's going to look and say, okay, it starts checking from column to column. Where is May? It finds May. And then I want to return everything here. So what it's basically going to do is that, hold on. Yes. Okay, we can see it here. So it's going to look from column to column. When it figures out May, it returns everything under May. Okay, for example. And then let's do this. Okay, so now let's look if this makes sense. Is this May? This is May, right? 379, this and this. If I change this to August, you can see that it matches, right? So, but now this is not the interesting part. If I wanted to introduce maybe the headers along with it, I could have said start from 5 so that it shows me August and this. Now, this is where XLOOKUP gets interesting. You can, how do I explain this? XLOOKUP does not return a value. XLOOKUP returns a range. So because of that, I can do something that looks very funny, which is I start from this first cell, I put a colon. What this means is saying start from B5, which is the first cell here, salesperson, and go all the way till whatever this XLOOKUP returns. Meaning that if this XLOOKUP is returning May data, my result will start from B5 and it will go all the way to there. Let's see what happens. So look at what happens. Just by doing this, I can now change this. March, June, and it's expanding. Now I can take this and then I insert a chart. Let me look for one that shows the month here, this one. Okay, good. Okay, so now with this, I can then do, anything here. And that's the beautiful thing about dynamic arrays. If I change this to April, you can see that my chart stops basically at April, And so if you're creating a dashboard that this is a bigger part of, you can do this behind the scenes, have the chart linked to it, and whenever you change your drop down, that value kind of changes. I have one example in this sheet, but for the interest of time, I'll leave it at this, except people say, oh, show me that example. If not,
yeah, please go on.
Okay, let me do this. Let me show you this one. This one is also, dynamic charts, and I added a little twist to it. And the idea here is I'm using, like I said, what I wanted to show you in this session are just different functions and different ideas. I can't make you an expert in this session, but just giving you ideas so that when you go back, you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know I could do something like this. I could use this function. I could try it. And I would send, of course, the workbook as well. If I send it before, people won't watch what I'm doing. They'll be trying to do it on the side. So now they are forced to look at me.
True.
Okay, so now let me introduce quickly a simple function. What I want to do in this case is this. Let me explain what I want. I want to see the top salesmen I have. So when I say top salesmen, is look at this. You will notice that I have dates, I have salespeople, and I have what they've sold. Okay. Now you can see that multiple people. You can see Hannah appears a couple of times, right? But I want to see what is the total sale for Hannah. What's the total sale for Eugene and all that? And I want to see only the top of them, maybe the top 1, top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5. Now, what you're looking at here is a classic pivot table case, right? Because I can then say, I want to list all the sales reps and I want you to sum up their sales, which is what you do in a pivot table. You can put this into a pivot table, drag the sales rep into rows. It gives you a unique list, and then you drag sales into values and it sums it up. So even though Hannah appears multiple times, it will list Hannah once and total all her sales. If you don't want to use a pivot table because maybe it's not fully dynamic, you can use some of the new functions in Excel. Group by, this was what I showed in the London Excel meetup. And it's very simple to use. So even if you haven't used it before, you get it. Group by, it says row fields. It means what do you want listed in the rows, right? Meaning from row to row. I want the sales rep listed. So I will select, I don't think this, okay, this is a table. Okay. So I select all the sales rep, meaning I want you to look at that list and give me the list of all the sales reps. Okay. Now, values is what you want to aggregate. Okay, what am I aggregating? I want to see the sales for each of those sales reps. So I select the sales. Okay, that's basically it. And now what do you want to do with that sales value you have? Do you want to find the average? Do you want to find the sum? Do you want to find the mean? Whatever. I want to find the sum. Okay, and see what Excel does for you very neatly. It looks at that long list, and don't be deceived. This list is long. Let me show you. Here. Okay, it's a long list. Okay, but it has given you a very, simple result. Everybody and their total, and then, the total. Now you can get rid of some things. Here you can say, oh, do you want to show headers? I won't show headers. I didn't select headers. Do I want to show total? Let's assume I don't want to show total. So I remove total and I do 0 as well there. Okay, so you can see that total row disappears. Now I have only the salespeople and their values. Now this is the interesting part. I said I wanted to do a top, I wanted to see who sold the most. So the easiest way to do that is to have this data sorted in descending order, right? Meaning that the highest comes first and then it goes down that way. You don't need to use sort function or sort by for that. Group by can do that. So internally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next argument, which is called sort order. Sort order just says, by what column do you want to sort? Is it the first column or the second column? It's the sales column. So obviously I know I'm sorting by what? 2. That's the first thing. The next question you ask yourself is, are you sorting in descending or ascending order? Descending meaning highest first, ascending meaning lowest first. I want highest first. So for that reason, I put a minus. So when you're going in descending order, it's minus. When you're going in ascending order, it's plus. So the meaning of -2 here just says sort by the second column, but sort it from highest to lowest. See what happens by just pressing enter. You see, now we have what? The highest value at the top. Good. So now, that's not the interesting part, because this one is like, okay, well, maybe we know this. Now, how do I know the top 3, top 4? I'm assuming here, this is a very big assumption, which you shouldn't make, but for demonstration purposes, that you don't have 2 people who have the same value, okay? That everybody has a different sum, which is not necessarily true. But this is just, so I'm putting this caveat out so that everybody who watches it knows that if you use this, you're assuming that, you don't have duplicate scores ties. But this is the idea. I wanted to just introduce another function, which is called the take function, right? So the take function allows you to select from an array. Like if I say take 1, it means from these 10 values, give me the first. If I say take 2, give me the first 2. Take 3, give me the first 3. So this is what happens here. If you do take of this entire thing, and I select this cell that has 1 here, what it means is that give me just the first, row, basically, is what it's going to do. Okay. And if I change this to 2, change this to 3, change this to 4, it gives me my top 4 and so on. So I can create a chart now, right, with this, with my top, okay, and put it here. I have a scroll bar that I have hidden, which I'm just going to pull off. Here. Okay, my scroll bar is here. That's this guy. So this should be on top. And what I'm doing with this basically is I'm using this scroll bar to control the value in this cell. Okay, so if this value changes, this value changes. So watch it now. If I do this, it becomes 5. If I do this, it becomes 6, 7, 8, and so on. Okay, that's how this is working. And then you can make the chart title also dynamic, by, chart titles can be, you can point them to a cell. I have a cell here, so see what I'm doing. When it is 7, it shows top 7. When it goes top 6, top 5, top 3, top 2. And this is like a fully, dynamic chart, which is using group by and using the take function. And that is the last example. So Rupom, now we can answer questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really fun. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the session, he's a very, very cool trainer. So you cannot leave the session without smiling. And I could only see the hearts coming up during the session, the claps coming up, and wow coming up during the session. So it was simply amazing session. And I would say the tricks, the slick part of your training was like adding something more to the regular function of the formula that you used. So that is quite amazing. We are really thankful for your presence today. It was an amazing presentation, and we will soon be uploading this in the YouTube channel so that who missed today's amazing class can also be part of it.
Thank you so much, and really thank you again for the invite, and to you and the other great guys doing great stuff in Bangladesh. Hopefully, like anytime, so long as I'm available, I'm more than happy to
Yeah.
show up. Yeah, there's still a lot of other sheets which we can talk about in another session.
Yes.
So, but I think this was
we
good
will
for.
soon invite you to
Okay.
see the other sheets also.
That would be good, but I didn't want to go too far in today, because dynamic arrays can get really complicated when you start bringing lambdas
Exactly.
in there. But at least I wanted to have a balance. Some things that beginners may be able to understand easily, some other things that intermediates, and then some experts may also pick one or two things. So that's kind of like making it balanced across. So that's the idea. I hope it worked out, at least for those of you that
Yeah,
took out your
obviously
time
it,
to
it
listen.
was really fine, and dynamic arrays are really game changers. And I would say it has kept Excel alive till now, where we
That's
have a Power BI, and also we are talking about Fabric. So
yes.
in these days, Excel is alive only because of some additional features Microsoft is introducing, like
Correct.
dynamic arrays, and there are much more coming up soon.
Yeah,
And
and every other thing they introduce takes advantage of the fact that you have dynamic arrays. Like now you have
yeah,
Python in Excel, but imagine
yeah,
that
true,
Excel could only give you one value for every formula. Then it doesn't make any sense. Even if Python gives you this huge, very nice looking, thing, you can't get it to
true,
show up because dynamic arrays have not been enabled. So basically, that's full change of Excel's calculation engine enabled a lot of other things to be built on top of that. And you're right, this makes it very relevant. A lot of these things are things we needed to do with VBA before, but Excel is constantly bringing in things natively. Checkboxes are now there, you don't need to use VBA.
true.
Lambdas are now there, so you don't need to write your user-defined function as we used to do in the day. So Excel is now very modern in that sense. So if you are not yet
True.
on this train, you need to jump on it.
Yeah. Excel is competing side by side with Power BI and Fabric, so it's really amazing and making our
Yes.
lives so easy.
Easy. Yeah. Some of these things
Yeah,
used to be so difficult. We had to write a lot of control shift enter formulas, and it was, and you have to drag it down, make sure it covers. If you expect that there will be 5 more cells added, drag it more
yeah,
than
true.
5, So, but now I don't really bother with that. I just like, okay, make sure everything is linked in a way that, it
Yeah,
dynamically
true.
expands, and so on.
Yeah.
So, yes. So
So
that's
thank you
that.
very much,
You're welcome.
Victor, and we really appreciate your time and effort today. It was a brilliant presentation, as always. I had seen many of your sessions online, and we are so fortunate to have you today among us, and look forward to have you in our future sessions and cover the rest of the worksheets you have in your Excel file.
Thank you so much, and it's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. It's a
It's been a
pleasure
pleasure.
having
Thank.
you, and take care.
All
Have a
right,
good
Will.
health. Yeah. Look forward
Thank you
to
so
see you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you,
Thank
Victor, and
you,
thank you,
Victor.
Rupom
Thank
bhai.
you.
It was really an amazing session, and Victor, you are an amazing trainer. I must say,
Thank you
your
so
way of
much.
the teaching is very, what I can say, engaging, and I cannot actually get the chance to move my focus somewhere else. So my focus was 100% with you, with your presentation. It was very interactive. So I really appreciate the way you actually teach.
That's a very good. That's so good a compliment. Thank you so much. I really, really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you
So I
so
live
much.
in London. If you come here in the London, so please, I'll be really very like
Oh,
it will be like an
oh,
honor for me to meet you here.
Okay, I think maybe you send me a message after now. We can connect on LinkedIn, and yes, I should be there very soon so that we can definitely connect. Yeah,
That definitely.
just send me a message on
Yeah, I will
LinkedIn. Yeah.
collect your details from Rupom Bhai. No worry.
Yes. All right.
Thank you very much, brother, and thank you, Rupom Bhai, for making this happen.
Thank you, Karan bhai.
All
Okay,
right.
great. So we can conclude the session here. And if I get any question after today's webinar, I will pass it to you.
That's fine. I am more than happy to respond to it.
Thank you so much. Take
Yes.
care, everyone. Take care, Victor. Bye.
Okay, bye.